Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a classic underdog story that absolutely changed automotive history forever. We're going to look at how a broke, struggling startup in post-war Italy produced just one single vehicle that didn't just save the company, it forged a legendary dynasty. So, how exactly did a broke post-war startup defeat the absolute, undisputed giants of racing? That's the core mystery we're unpacking today. You see, back in the late 1940s, Enzo Ferrari wasn't the automotive kingmaker we all know today. Not even close. He was a guy facing some seriously dire financial stakes, looking right down the barrel at well-funded, established automotive titans and desperately trying to figure out how to outrun them. To really grasp the sheer scale of their eventual victory, we first have to look at the gritty reality of the situation. In the 1940s, Maranello was truly a company on the brink. During the Second World War, the business suffered severe bombing damage that completely devastated two of their factories. So they weren't just starting from zero, right? They were literally starting from the rubble of a global conflict, desperately trying to rebuild both their infrastructure and their dream. And man, the reality of that daily struggle was incredibly unglamorous. I mean, the company was just completely strapped for cash. Actually, one former employee recounted that the team was so incredibly broke, mechanics and personnel had to ride to the races sitting on simple wooden benches mounted in the backs of flatbed trucks. Just picture that. While they had tasted a little bit of moderate success in 1947, it just wasn't enough to pay the bills. Ferrari desperately needed major international wins just to establish themselves and to survive financially. Well, that desperation led to a massive, game-changing pivot. On September 15, 1948, Enzo Ferrari took a monumental leap. Right there at the illustrious Turin Motor Show, he unveiled a car at a motor show for the very first time. This moment was the culmination of his grand dream, transitioning from a mere racing team manager to the actual owner of his own car company. He was finally launching his very first small series model onto the world stage. The press took one look at this car's sleek, simple, and beautifully open-top shape and immediately dubbed it the Barchetta, which translates from Italian as little boat. It's a moniker that stuck right away. In fact, this specific design was so universally influential that from that moment on, the term Barchetta actually became the absolute standard used to describe all open-top sports prototypes. Pretty wild, right? But the Barchetta's true underdog status was actually hidden right underneath that elegant hood. It was powered by Gioacchino Colombo's 60-degree V12 engine. Now pay attention to the total displacement here. It's just 1995.02 cc. That is essentially a tiny 2.0-liter engine. Yet somehow, fed by 3 Weber carburetors and paired with a 5-speed manual transmission, this diminutive little powerhouse unleashed a highly advanced 140 horsepower at 6,600 RPM. That was enough to push the car to a top speed of 220 kilometers per hour. So that brings us to a really crucial point, the number 166. Where does that exact number actually come from? Well, it represents the exact cubic centimeter displacement of a single individual cylinder within that V12 engine. Think about it for a second. When you multiply 166 by those 12 cylinders, you get right around that 1995 cc total displacement. It's such a brilliant, clever naming convention, and it ended up defining an entire era of Maranello's history. Of course, an incredible engine needs an incredible body to match, right? So Ferrari turned to a Milanese coachworks called Carrows Touring. These guys utilize their patented Superleggera, which means super light, method. Drawing inspiration straight from the aeronautics industry, they built a small diameter steel tubular space frame and fixed aluminum alloy panels directly onto it. Because of this, the chassis and body formed a single, highly aerodynamic unit, providing exceptional structural rigidity. And the result? An absolutely astounding dry weight of just 650 kilograms. To put that into perspective, that's roughly 1,430 pounds. It weighed practically nothing. And this perfectly sets the stage for the totally mismatched battles ahead. On one side, you have Ferrari's tiny 2.0-liter engine. On the other side, the established Goliaths of the track, heavy hitter manufacturers like Bentley, Talbot, and Delahai. These competitors were fielding massive engines that literally had 3 times the displacement of the little Ferrari. Going into international endurance racing, the 166mm was considered a monumental, almost laughable long shot. Nobody gave them a chance. Now this brings us to a super fascinating piece of history. In June 1949, Le Mans was returning for its very first running after a 10-year hiatus due to the war. And the night before this brutal 24-hour race, well, Enzo Ferrari experienced a severe bout of panic. He was absolutely terrified that the car would suffer a did not finish. That would have been completely disastrous for a struggling company's reputation. So Ferrari actually called up his driver, Luigi Chinetti, and asked him to withdraw the entry entirely. But Chinetti's response? Absolutely legendary. As a veteran who had already won Le Mans in 1932 and 1934, Chinetti assured Ferrari that he had worked day and night to prep this car. He made a bold, flat-out guarantee that he would finish the race. In fact, knowing the grueling nature of the event, Chinetti had even installed an oil reserve tank right there on the passenger's side floor. Why? Specifically, so he wouldn't have to risk opening the hood during the entire 24-hour ordeal. Talk about preparation. Now, as you probably know, Le Mans is famously a team endurance event, but I want you to consider this number, 72. That is the total number of minutes that the car's owner and co-driver Lord Selsdon actually spent behind the wheel during the entire 24-hour race. Think about that. He took the wheel for just over an hour in the morning, and that was it. That means Luigi Chinetti drove for nearly 23 hours straight, literally all by himself. And what makes this superhuman solitary effort even more astonishing is that he drove the majority of the race having to maneuver around a slipping clutch. Despite this massive mechanical handicap, not to mention the sheer physical exhaustion, Chinetti crossed the finish line to win the 1949 24 Hours of Le Mans by a full lap over the nearest Goliath. It was exactly the massive international victory that Ferrari desperately needed to survive. And the craziest part, Le Mans wasn't just an isolated fluke. Looking at a timeline of their year shows an unprecedented winning streak that totally secured the company's future. In April 1949, Clemente Biondetti and Ettore Salani took first overall in the famously grueling Mille Miglia. 2 months later came Chinetti's heroic Le Mans victory, and then, later that same year, another 166 won the 24 Hours of Spa. To this day, the Ferrari 166 remains the only car in history to ever win all 3 of these prestigious endurance races. Nobody else has done it. This incredible sporting success had an immediate, profound impact on the business itself. Almost overnight, the Barchetta began shifting from the grimy, exhaust-filled racetrack to the elegant, manicured lawns of the Concorde d'Elegance. These refined events were really gaining popularity among high society, and they became the perfect avenue to meet a totally new clientele. It proved once and for all that Ferrari's engineering marvels had immense commercial viability way beyond the racing circuit. But despite all their newfound fame, these cars were never mass-produced. In fact, only 25 Touring Superleggera bodied 166mm's were ever built. That's it, just 25. And this extreme rarity only added to their mystique and desirability among the global elite. They became the ultimate status symbol. You see, the 166mm effectively wrote the blueprint for Maranello's future. It sparked the critical shift from being a pure racing team into a true maker of road-going sports cars. It attracted wealthy privateer drivers who wanted to race, sure, but it also brought in well-heeled clients who just wanted the road version. This allowed for lucrative custom modifications to the exterior and the cabin. It even led to prominent figures like the industrialist Giovanni Agnelli purchasing his very first Ferrari. Basically, it established the sustainable luxury business model that the company relies on to this very day. And if we want to point to the exact physical embodiment of this massive turning point, we just look at chassis 008M. This is the specific 1949 166mm Touring Barchetta that achieved that incredible first-place finish at the Mille Miglia, and then carried Luigi Chinetti through his grueling 23-hour drive at Le Mans. It is a historic artifact of immeasurable importance. It's essentially the car that saved the brand. The late automotive collector Bob Lee, who actually owned chassis 008M, summed up the car's legacy perfectly with this assessment. He said, "It really put Ferrari on the map as a race car builder." And he hit the nail on the head. Without the 1660mm, and specifically without its ability to beat engines 3 times its size, the company simply may not have survived the financial struggles of the late 1940s. It absolutely cemented its status as arguably the most important vehicle the company ever produced. Which leaves us with this final, incredible thought. You know, history often hinges on the absolute slimmest of margins. If Enzo Ferrari had made that phone call and successfully withdrawn the car the night before Le Mans, or if Luigi Chinetti hadn't endured 23 hours straight, wrestling a slipping clutch in a tiny, lightweight little boat, would the global Ferrari empire even exist today? It's a real testament to the fragile, fascinating nature of history, and how one little underdog machine managed to change the world forever.